Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Crash, and the other day I asked people on Twitter what were some problems or questions they had when they started reading manga. And a lot of those people mentioned the same thing, that, as anime watchers, they fear their manga counterparts wouldn't be able to offer them as much value as the anime. So today I'm actually gonna tackle exactly that and compare both anime and manga and go through the advantages of both mediums in the most objective way I can, so that you can decide for yourself which is for you. But please do let me know if you prefer anime or manga and why, and if you agree with my points in the comments below. So we're gonna start with what I consider to be the pros of anime. And anime has two obvious and big advantages that I think it's the two main factors as to why people generally go through anime first: the animation and sound. Animation is in the name of it after all, so it makes sense that it is the biggest draw. Things move, you get to have a deeper understanding of everything that is happening. This is especially true in battle anime, and to give you a more specific example, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5 adaptation is known for making things more clearer in terms of some of the final fights. Because it deals with time manipulation and pausing, it just doesn't come across as clear and obvious as Araki probably wanted in the manga, but it translates better into the anime. And while I do think it's not that hard to understand movement in manga, and there are mangaka like Murata that knows how to do movement really well, it will never really have the same flow as an anime. In terms of sound, that actually comes in two parts. First one being the voice acting. If the voice actor is good, and we're talking about potentials here in these advantages, if the anime or manga fail at their execution, that is on that specific series and not on the media itself. So, good voice actors can definitely bring a new dynamic to the character and scene. They can make the emotion of a particular scene so much more powerful. They can make a sad scene sadder, an angry character feel angrier. It can make that character feel alive and help connect with the viewer. And soundtracks, the second part, does the exact same thing. By having music that is written specifically for a scene or a mood of an anime, it can be written in a way to amplify the emotions and themes of their anime and make powerful scenes even more powerful. And these are, honestly, the only advantages that anime needs to bring people in, to make people want to watch the anime instead of wanting to read the manga. And we can add color to that as well. I literally just saw a guy talking about how he didn't like manga because it was black and white. And while I obviously don't agree that it is too big of a problem, I can definitely see the advantages of having color. You can understand things more quickly, it's more appealing to the eyes, and colors can also help set themes, moods, and even world building. It's a powerful tool that manga is written with in mind, because when an author creates a character, they probably have their color schemes planned as well, for volume covers, eventual adaptations, color pages, promotional art, etc. But it's something that is not present in the actual product, so anime definitely has the advantage there. And that's kind of it for the biggest pros of anime, though again, these are not small things. These are things that can make the anime adaptation the definitive version of a story. As for the last thing I wanted to say, and it's a bit of an out there one that I honestly never heard anyone talk about, and it's not relevant to everyone, but if you are planning on getting really into anime or manga and go down that rabbit hole, then this is something you have in mind: the availability. And by this I mean the ability to find an anime or manga translated into English in either legal or illegal ways, I'm not judging. And actually, another advantage that is related is the ability to keep up with all the new anime if you so wish. So basically there's 4 seasons: winter, summer, spring and fall. Hopefully someone taught you this in school. And every season has a decently big but clearly limited number of anime debuts. I think it's generally like 40 anime? I may be wrong. If I am, don't be afraid to correct me in the comments. But the point is, most of them get translated in some way, either Crunchyroll, TV, Netflix, or if all else fails, fandubs. And you can keep up or at least be aware of them all if you really want to. But also, if you want to go back into early stuff, I think most of it can be found in some way. Probably not all, but most of the big deal anime of the past you're gonna be able to find. In comparison, it's basically impossible to keep up with all the manga that are ongoing, because there's thousands upon thousands and less than half of them are being translated. And to further back you go into history, the last manga you're gonna find that is properly translated from beginning to end. A lot of the titles that are famous and important to the history of manga are going to have incomplete translations, and a lot of them are not gonna have translations at all. And this is kind of a reality we have to deal with as manga fans. And there's also the chance that that one manga that is perfect for your taste is something we'll never be aware of because it's a manga that is never going to be translated because it's published in an indie manga magazine that only a handful of people in Japan read. Now, I kinda want to move on to manga pros, but the first one is one that is mostly for manga, but can be for anime as well, depending on the situation. And that is being the source material. Now, I think most anime are based on manga. If it isn't, it's an adaptation of a video game or light novel, but there are definitely a decent number of original anime, like for example Neon Genesis Evangelion. In general though, manga comes first, and being the original comes with its own set of advantages. Everything that is included is planned by the actual writer. And once we get into adaptations, a lot of them will change things, be it not fully adapt the manga, be forced to remove scenes, change things up, add things up like fillers, and sometimes have to completely rewrite an ending. And it's harder to do these changes when you're not the person who originally created the source material. Your changes may be detrimental to the actual story, they may end up hurting the adaptation in the long run, it may create inconsistencies, it may just not live up to the rest of the material, or it can just be a waste of time in adding things that are never going to get a decent payoff. And the sheer amount of times this happens is reason number one why a lot of people will turn to manga. Because ultimately the anime adaptation is just adapted it wrong, and people want to know how the original story goes, and most of the times they end up preferring the manga version because it was the version of the story that is more consistent. But the biggest advantage that manga has is the art. Manga can afford to have more detail into each and every scene. And it's in this detail, this improvement in art, that I think can compensate for the movement and sound, because these artists can draw panels that show everything you need to know about a character without even needing to use words. One look, and you can tell exactly what the character is feeling, the mood of the scene, the themes, everything. Anime rarely can afford to go that extra mile because it needs to animate and color these drawings. Plus, the author of the manga probably can afford more time in the panel that the animators can afford in a single frame. And in terms of a more personal reason, I do love the fact that in manga you can tell better the author's personal style. If you read a lot of manga by an author, you can start to pick up the nuances of them. And there's just so much variety in art styles. And it's not that all anime looks the same, but there's definitely a homogenization and a smoothing of the art and design that, in my opinion, makes it feel more bland than it does in manga, even if sometimes that means that the manga is worse. At least it's worse in a personal way, which me, prefer. As for another cool thing that manga has, it's pacing. What I mean by this is that you have more control of the pacing of a manga than you do with the anime. Anime moves in real time. The pacing of a show is decided by the show's writers, and it moves at a regular speed for everyone. In manga, it goes as fast as you want it to be. This doesn't mean that manga stories don't have their own pacing, because they definitely do. A manga that speedruns everything in 3 chapters is going to have faster pacing than one that does the same thing in 30. But you can decide how long you want to linger in each panel and page. If a panel has tons of information, you can decide to stop and absorb all of that if you want, or you can just skim it and move to the parts that interest you the most. In anime, it's easier to overwhelm the viewer with too much at the same time. While it is still kind of possible to do that in manga, it's always going to be more manageable. Plus, one thing that I really like is that I can read it for as long as I want. There's definitely less pressure, at least to me, to grab a manga and read it for 5 or 10 minutes while waiting for something or the train or wherever and then stop, than it is for anime. Again, this last point is more for me. It bugs me to start an episode and stop midway, whereas it's just so much easier to pick up a manga at any place, anytime. But maybe you don't have any problem in stopping an episode, I don't know. As for the final pro of manga, in my eyes, it's just the sheer amount of manga and topics that exists. Now, when I talked about availability to anime, I meant in terms of the percentage of anime that is available to us compared to all the anime that exists. But in terms of actual sheer number of titles available, there's just so much stuff in manga, and most of it never gets adapted. Whereas most anime originals eventually get their own manga, and that might have to do with budgets. Generally, an anime is made by big studios that can afford to pay someone to draw a manga tie-in and get some extra money, while on the other hand, it's just so much more costly to adapt something to anime that for 90% of the manga it's just not feasible or even worthwhile. But that means that anime is a lake and manga is an ocean. And if you have to pick only one place to swim, I definitely know which one I'm picking. To me personally, this is the biggest advantage. There's a lot of stories that are not going to be translated into anime for a multitude of reasons, including censorship or tackling themes that are just not good for television. But having in mind the more limited accessibility of some of them, these manga can afford to have that. This is not to say that there are an anime that tackle dark, controversial, or bold topics, or that there are an anime that are more experimental. There are, but in manga it's just so much more common. And a lot of shoujo and josei manga don't get adapted at all, so if you're a fan of those, manga is where it should be. And yeah, these are the reasons to pick up one or the other. And to be honest, the best thing you can do is not be like me and watch anime, but the best thing you can do is to actually experience both. A lot of people are anime onlys because they're afraid of finding the manga boring, but the best you can do is check it out and see if you find it boring or not. At the end of the day, you may still find it to be boring, but at least now you know instead of just speculating. And if you didn't, awesome, you're all set up to dip into the world of manga. So why don't I watch anime? Well, the biggest and most anticlimactic reason is just I don't feel like it most of the time. I want to actively read manga. It's a true passion that I've had for a long time. But anime? Even the ones I like, I'm enjoying while I'm watching them, but as soon as I stop, there's never that need to return to it, to watch the next episode, even though with the ones that I'm enjoying. And that makes it hard to actually finish the series. But in manga, even the ones I'm not enjoying, I still want to read them and complete them, which is weird and not how people are supposed to work, yet that's how I feel. But you don't need to be like that. And if this video made you want to check out manga for the first time, I'm also starting a series to help newcomers into the medium. A link to the playlist will be on the left if it's out already, and if it isn't, do stay tuned because it will. Either way, there's tons of other videos on manga on my channel, so please give it a visit, and if you like it, subscribe. And if you watch it till here, thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.